our friend, our colleague, our former Senator Andrew Serafini, guest of the distinguished senator from the 2nd District. Please rise for the invocation.
Sure. Thank you. Good morning. How exciting that you're all undefeated right now, right? I mean, none of your bills have been killed yet. In fact, I was told that most of them should pass. No, I'm sorry. Okay. Let me say, none of your bills have been killed yet, okay? I also was told if you have a fiscal note over $5, don't bring it, okay? In fact, I'm honored to pray for all of you today because I do pray for the senator from the 13th District every day. I'm not sure how it's working. Real quick before I pray, and I will try to be quick. I remember when I was in the House, and we would have a joint session, and the senators would come over. I remember sitting there thinking, I've been here 6 years, and they don't even know my name. And then I came over here. We had a joint session. I went over there, and I looked at all these people, and I said, I don't know any of these people's names. And now I'm here, and I see a lot of different faces when I'm here, and I'm thinking, they don't even know my name. And that's not a big loss. Let's go ahead and pray if we can. Dear Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for your mercy, justice, and graciousness. Lord, bless these amazing people that sit before us and their families. Lord, as we look up in the gallery and we see those in attendance today, help these elected officials remember that this is why they are here. Help them remember that they are here by your goodness and your leading in their lives. Lord, we ask that they might create a better state and a better opportunity for those present and all citizens of this great state. That they would seek righteousness, but they would do it also with compassion and love. Help them to truly be servant leaders to all citizens of Maryland. Thank you for President Ferguson, the amazing staff, and the leadership of this state. What a sacred and amazing honor to serve you here. God, we ask that you comfort the Carter family. Thank you for President Carter and his service to this country. Thank you also, Lord, for our dear friend, the senator from the 8th District. Guide and direct her in her new position. We thank you for her years of service and her kind and genuine spirit and that amazing smile. Lord, we ask this all in your name. Amen.
Amen. Well said, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Recognized senator from the 2nd District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, colleagues. And there's not much I could say about Andy Serafini that you guys don't already know. I do like to thank him personally for not only his mentorship, but most importantly, his friendship. And in true Andy fashion, though, he did text me right before we came in here. And Mr. President, I just want to read this real quick. It says, after I pray, please don't say anything nice about me. Just say the only good thing he did was to resign to make room for me. And so with that, I ask that the senator's words be journalized. Thank you.
Without objection, most certainly we will journalize the wonderful invocation this morning and thank our good friend for joining us on a special day. Let's see. So has everyone recorded their presence? Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take, almost senator from the 27th, the call. With 40 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland is now in session. Senators, we are very, in the early days of session, we always have a little bit more flexibility with time, and so we get the opportunity to, at the end of each term, generally those who are retiring or know that they are leaving, we want to give them a chance to give some reflections about their time in the Senate and give members a chance to thank them for their service. And of course, there were several members who we weren't able to do that with this year because either for one reason or another, or the day before session, they were appointed to take a different job. We weren't able to give them a moment. And so I am so thrilled. Our first of what we will have several of these this upcoming session, but it is only appropriate that the Dean of the Senate, who truly was the lifeblood, the smile, the energy, the understanding, the representation of the people of Maryland. I'm so thrilled to be able to ask the one and only former senator, now county executive, Kathy Klausmeier, to please join us up on the dais.
Wow, That's my favorite word, I think, in the past couple days has been, wow. I wrote this speech, and you can see how much I put on it. And I do have to thank my speechwriter. I have a speechwriter. And she wrote me this beautiful, beautiful speech, but it was so beautiful, I just saved it. Because I don't know that she realized I just came here to not say goodbye, but to say what a wonderful time I've had here in the state Senate. And I needed Andy to write me some remarks. He always, comes up good, and it's so good to see him. I know he came just to see me today. And I have to just tell the story about the first time I saw Andy was, and he probably doesn't even remember, we were in the Senate all day long. He was still in the House. And, but for some reason we were here for a long time, and we all went down to the cafeteria, and it was bedlam, and it was when they had the folks that can't see real well that were there tending to all of us, and there was a long line outside and everything. But Andy, he popped up and said, look, I don't have time, here's a couple dollars, just pay for whatever it is you gotta do and be on your way, something. And it was so generous of him, and that was my first meeting, and I thought, that guy's not too bad, But anyway, and I can probably tell you stories about everyone in here, but I know you don't want to be sitting here all day long. And I'm looking at Senator Guile. Just so you know, I have someone in the office, my assistant. Is that what she is? So this is Amanda and Brad. They're over there taking care of me. But her name is Dawn Kyle. So I will not forget Dawn Kyle, and I won't forget Dawn Guile. And it has just made me think a whole lot. And I usually have, when I get to work, Jen's there and Sam's there, and hey, great, it's great. I walked in today and they're there, and they're here today. Please stand up. Okay. And then when I go up to finance, Tammy's there, and stand up, and I know them, and I don't really, Tammy, I always say she works for Senate Finance, and she takes care of us all, and she has done that exquisitely throughout my tenure. And my staff, they take care of me. Where's my glasses? How many times did Sam have to come up and say, here's your glasses, you can see? And actually, look, sometimes I do this now. And I was in an airport, and some guy said, you have 2 pair of glasses on. I said, yes, I do. And I said, it's all the rage in Baltimore. So anyway, but they always took care of me. They fix my iced tea. They bring my iced tea. So I can't thank them enough, but I can't thank each and every one of you. I think we work together. That's what the Senate is all about. It is a family. And first, I would like for my Finance Committee to stand up. And I want... And you'll think about me all the time because my picture's on the wall and all these different outfits and everything. And you'll notice I do have my leopard on today. I expect for the leopard, the Animal Caucus to continue on Tuesdays. Okay, so just to remember me, and you could actually wear a tie, Mr. President. So I have so many stories about each and every one of you, except for you new ladies in the back there. I'm sorry I didn't get to serve with you, but Senator Zucker, he would stop over in my office sometimes, and actually he has a great staff too that I adopted. So, and I wish I would there's part of them up there, yes. And I appreciated each and every one of them. And my biggest concern is to lose touch with everybody. So I'm going to have a reason every Monday to come down and stop in and see everybody, because it's very important that we keep Baltimore County in the best posture it can be. Do you hear that, Mr. Chairman? And all those on budget and tax, we want to be the best and the most. So anyway, I would like my delegation to stand up as well, my Baltimore County delegation. And I am asking that you do not grill me or ask any hard questions, okay? Because I'm very sensitive. So, have I forgotten anything? Wait a minute. Let me look on my paper here, and I want to see if I forgot anything. Oh.
Your family?
Oh, my family. No, my family, I guess if they're listening, I love them all. My grandchildren had the best time the night that I got sworn in. My grandson, who never hardly ever even speaks to me, he's 12 going on, 15 or 16. And you know how teenagers are. And I was all finished everything, and the next thing I knew, he jumped up. And I said, "What do you want?" He goes, "Where are the grandchildren?" And I said, "Yeah." So I had to make them all stand up. And they don't talk to me either most of the time. So they were so excited. And it has been an exciting time. And I want to thank the Baltimore County Council for giving me this honor to be the county executive. And as much as I laugh and everything about it, I have lots to learn and lots to do. And I would like my staff over here from Baltimore County just to stand up. And my driver. Woo! So I might have to ask somebody in a couple years to start driving Miss Stacy around, because I may forget how to drive. Anyway, no, it's an honor, and I don't take it lightly. It is an honor, and I am going to work very, very hard for Baltimore County and do the best job I can. And if anybody has any suggestions along the way, I'll take them. So, and it has been my honor to be able to stand up here and make you all laugh a little bit and make me feel better. And it is sad for me to be saying goodbye. Jim got on the elevator with me today, and we had a good relationship because Jim always took his car to my husband's garage. So, I mean, you had to be nice to him. But it's been a great time for 30 years, and if anybody wants any mementos of me, please stop by the office, because Joy would be happy for you to take them out of there. Because she said, "Kath, I love you, but get out tonight." So, but I'll be out, Mr. President, by Sunday. I think I'm going to bring the truck down. And I was going to have an online auction, but I didn't think anybody would buy anything from me, so. But we had many a good times in the office. We had many a serious times in the office. And I've had many a good times in here and many, many serious times in here. So it's been a wonderful, wonderful time that I have spent here. And I can't say enough. I love you all. Thank you very much. Okay.
Amazing. Love you. Amazing.
So,
We also have these flowers for you.
oh, thank you. Thank you, thank you. Ooh, they're cold. How do I look? So,
Like an
thank
executive.
you. Like an executive? And feel free, only those in Baltimore County delegation to call me. All the other ones, well, no, I love every delegation, but I love Baltimore County delegation the best. And good luck on that budget that you're working on this year, so.
Thank you.
And everything else, yeah. And don't let it trickle down to hurt us in Baltimore County. So,
Deal.
thank you.
Thank
I
you.
better quit while I'm ahead. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Oh,
you.
wait a minute.
Uh-oh.
And, you know, I just keep thinking of who I have to thank, but we have this whole staff here
Yes,
to say thank you. And for the purpose of saying Vicki Gruber and all of the DLS people that worked so very, very hard to fix every bill that I sent down there and had tons of questions. And thank you all very, very much, from the print shop to the people that came in and emptied my trash and fixed my floors to make them look so nice. And did I miss anybody? To the mailman. Anybody? Is there anyone that I forgot? Who? Oh my God, the troopers. They didn't drive me, but they took good care of me. So I'm going to miss them. I just can't say how much I'm going to miss. And what did you say the other day? In your heart and not your head. So did I miss anybody? Come on, speak up. No.
You got him.
I got them all. But, you know, the housekeeping staff here is just wonderful. They just were always pleasant. The security guards, as you walk in, were always pleasant. And I thank them all from the bottom of my heart. So thank you all, and sayonara.
Madam County Executive, before you head out of the chamber, we want to recognize the Chair of Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I can use Kathy's name now, but
most
she's
certainly.
not. So Kathy, it's just been such a pleasure to have you in the committee, that I've been in the committee with you for the last 6 years, and the entire committee has just so appreciated working with you and your knowledge and history, and you were a great vice chair. I knew you didn't want to be chair because you hoped to be county executive, so your wish came through. On a personal note, though, when I got to the Senate, Kathy really took me under wing and mentored me and showed me around and helped me find all the parties, so including in her office. But Kathy, I hope we don't lose touch. It's been such a delight working with you, and we just so appreciate all the hard work and knowledge and wisdom you've brought to the Senate. So
Well
thank
said.
you.
Well said. Senator from the 7th District, from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say it's been an honor serving with you, Senator. For those who don't know, I met the Senator about 27 years ago. She's a very humble person, and I'll tell a quick story. I got a call from Perry Hall Boosters, the sports boosters from Perry Hall High School, that they wanted to have a fundraiser. They wanted to do something called Barnyard Bingo. For those of you that don't know it, Google it. They needed me to bring a cow to the football field. Sure. So I loaded a heifer up, take it over there, and I had to feed her all night long so she could make it. And I show up with this cow, this heifer, and they have an area staked out with all these, look like a checkerboard. And when they're ready, I let her out, and they sold all the spots off. And she walked around for about a half hour before she finally did her thing. And Senator was the judge, got to pick the spot. That's how she and I got to meet each other. Here we are years later down here dealing with all the BS sometimes. But I do want to say, our districts are next to each other. And so for the last 23 years, we've done a lot of Eagle Scouts together, ribbon cuttings, because our districts are right next to each other. And she is one of the most genuine people you'll ever meet. And it is true, she has big shoes to fill. Think about Johnny O. He's done an incredible job for the last 6 years. There were some great people that put in for this position. The council had a hard choice. They made the right choice. And I think on behalf of myself, my constituents, and I know I speak for my colleagues from Baltimore County, we look forward to serving with you for the next 2 years and doing everything we can to support you. So thank you for your time, your effort, and see you back in the county.
Well said. Well said. Vice Chair of the Triple E Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Kathy Klausmeier and I were two of the members of the class of '94, the ferocious class of '94. We were a huge class, and the last four of us included Obie Patterson and Shirley Nathan Pulliam. And Kathy, you have now abandoned me. But you guys have to know, I mean, you all know in this chamber, this is a hard job. And former Senator Klausmeier was there the whole time, from being sworn in January of 1995 until last week. So you have abandoned me. I'm the only one, but I was smart enough to take a 12-year gap between my service in the House and the Senate. But wishing you all the best, and we're going to have a reunion in memory of the late delegate Jimmy Malone, and we will want to honor you at the same time. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for that reflection. Sure, why not? Yes, come on up.
No, and you said the Honorable Jimmy Malone, and we all, you know, he was in our class. But I neglected to say President Miller, and he was so very good to me, and I really feel bad, Mike, that I didn't. But he gave me that wonderful office that I had, and at that time I said, I don't need that big office. He said, you worked hard. It was like one of my toughest elections, and he said, you get it. And so it is a wonderful office, so thank you. So I couldn't leave without saying thank you to him, and thank you to you too, Bill. But
Yes.
Mr. President.
No.
Okay, Bill. I know everybody keeps saying, what should I say? I said, just call me boss. How about that?
Let's recognize the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Kathy, I just want you to know that the Palominos will still live on strongly in Annapolis. Now, I might tell you a little story about what the Palominos are. Many years ago, after my husband passed away, we were sitting in a restaurant having a glass of wine, and I made the statement that I was going to, I couldn't remember the word cougar. So I said, I'm going to become a Palomino. That I was going to find a couple of 40-year-old guys and see if they could keep up with me, whatever. And so there were there were 7 of us there. Having drinks, and so we became the Palominos, and we have been ever since. People have often wondered what the Palominos were, and now we know. There you go. So we will keep that going, Kathy, and I know you'll be here to meet with us and enjoy with us lots of times. So I'll miss you, but we'll still really be in touch.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Madam County Executive, we are going to miss you deeply. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We'll see you soon. See you soon.
Watch for me on the TV and make sure I look good.
Deal. Wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Senate is a one-of-a-kind place. You know, they don't make this, write the script. It's excellent. All right. Well, as we say goodbye, we have a little bit of work to do, and then we do have a further reflection from one of our senators from Baltimore County at the end. We're going to go through, we'll go ahead and do some of our, get the kind of the work of the day done, and then we will hand it over to the senator from Baltimore County. So with that, Majority Leader moves so be considered the reading of the journal from the previous legislative day. First order of business is the introduction of bills. Clerk will read the bills.
Senate Bill 269, Senator Jackson, Maryland Community College Promise Scholarship Program revisions, education, energy, the environment.
Majority
Senate
Leader
Bill,
moves so be considered the reading of the calendar. Our next order of business is clerk will read the next order of business.
I don't know what happened to it. Proposed rule change to Rule 26A. Question is on the adoption of the amendment to Rule 26A.
All right, the question before the body is the adoption of an additional rule. Let's recognize the chair of the Rules Committee on the rule.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. As many of our colleagues may know, there was a group that met over the interim to discuss how we could make the committee review process of all of our thousands of bills a little more expeditious. And we came up with a recommendation that was adopted by the Rules Committee yesterday that I put before you today. And that is that we limit the number of bills. We change it from 30 to 25 that people can request from the Department of Legislative Services. And we similarly limit to 25 the number of bills that folks can introduce as well. There are some exceptions. If people have delegation bills, if there is a bill as a result of a task force or commission or a work group, and also if one is introducing one on behalf of the administration or an executive branch. There is also an exception if you have pre-filed bills, and that will give you 5 more. So a max of 30 if you've pre-filed the 5, otherwise, I'm sorry, of 25. Otherwise, it is a cap of 20 bills.
All right,
Or you can put in fewer. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Right. You can put in fewer. But I think that we've gotten feedback certainly from committee chairmen, from I think all of us, about the increasing number of bills. And so our hope is that people will be a bit more
all right, senators, hold on, please. We can give the senator attention.
That this will help to move things on a bit more quickly if we have to give a little more thought as to how many bills we are introducing. Thank you.
Excellent.
And move for the
adoption
of the rule.
So, the chair of the committee moves for the adoption of rule change to Rule 26A. Yes, chair recognizes Senator from Anne Arundel.
Thank you. Just a question on that.
Will the chair yield for a question?
Of course.
Senator may proceed.
This year I've been on a scooter, so I've had a lot of time to work on bills. So I've already had drafted the limit, and they're already on my desk and all that. And if we change this, just procedurally, would I have to get up and ask for an exception to the rule?
It would be prospective this year. It would be at the time of adoption now. So prospective.
Okay, but the drafting's already handled, but I think it talks about 20 bills for introduction. So, I mean, I would have changed it if I'd known this, but I've already drafted them and I have them. So I imagine if it's just like any other rule, we could suspend the rules with the vote of the Senate, or?
So if the Secretary of the Senate is advising, if they've already been introduced, it would not apply because the rule is not in. So anything that's already introduced. But if it were subsequent to, at the time of the adoption of the rule, it would apply.
Okay, so the ones on my desk in my office.
But they have not been introduced yet.
They have not been introduced. Could I ask for a suspension of the rules, just like any other?
I suppose at the time of introduction, you could ask for a suspension before they were read over.
Yeah, I would say
this week.
As is any rule, it can be request for.
You can make the request at the time of introduction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, if I had known about this prior, I wouldn't have done this. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further? Yes, Chair recognizes Senator from Prince George.
Yes, if you yield for a question.
Senator may proceed.
Sometimes I've had 35 or 40 bills. When I get those bills, can I give them to someone else to put in for me and be unlimited?
Absolutely. As long as they have that person's name on them.
Oh, okay, never mind. Okay.
Right. Nope. If they have your name on it, it would count towards your cap.
All right. Any further discussion? Yes, Chair recognizes Senator from Baltimore and Carroll Counties.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to continue the conversation that started earlier. Some of us, I think, probably have made commitments to people to introduce legislation, and it would be very difficult and awkward at this point to go back to the people to whom we have made commitments and say, because of a rule just adopted, I can't introduce the bill that I promised to introduce. So I hope that the chair will be accommodating for those of us who have made those commitments when we try to introduce the legislation. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, Chair recognizes the Senator from Howard County, Ann Montgomery.
Would the senator yield for a question?
Yes.
Senator may proceed.
So under B2, it says bills introduced on behalf of the administration or executive department or other unit would be an exemption. So does that only apply to the chair, or if the Department of the Environment asked me to put in a bill for them, does that count?
I would think that that would count if you're introducing it officially on their behalf.
Yes. Right.
Is that how-
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? If not, yes, Chair recognizes the Senator from Prince George's.
Yeah, I want to clarify that issue because I hadn't thought of it until just now. And I have two bills, I think, that I was asked by different departments to introduce. But what does officially asked mean as opposed to unofficially asked? Madam Chair?
Perhaps a letter from the department asking you officially to do it would be helpful. Look, I know we all are approached by the executive department. Maybe it's not part of their official legislative agenda, but they've asked one of us to do. But I think we have to have some limits here, and this is...
The Secretary of the Senate has advised that a by request is the way that the office has determined it. If it is by request in the bill request by the department, the task force, that is what applies through the exceptions. That's how they've...
So that means that in the drafting, I have to make sure it says by request.
Correct.
We're being advised that is correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the Senator from Montgomery County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just so you know, I was in email conversation with the bill drafter on one of the bills that I was requested to introduce and asked for a by request after talking to your wonderful Chief of Staff. Bill drafter was a little perplexed. So maybe bill drafters need to know, and we need to come up with a system as to how that goes. And no disrespect to the bill drafter.
Right. Oh, no, understood.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Chair recognizes the Senator from the Middle Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Mr. President. Real quickly, for the exception, so would the chair just grant the exception? Is it an oral thing, or does it require a vote?
So in terms of enforcement, there will be oversight by the Secretary of the Senate.
So yeah, so if you need an exception, you go to the chair and just say, I've got a bill I want to introduce, and then the chair says yes or no, or does the chair say, well, it's going to be a week before Rules Committee meets, and then we'll vote on whether you can do that? Or are you still formulating that process?
So I think this is still new, so we will have to figure that out, but there will be there are folks here who are keeping track of how many bills, so that's how I'll do it.
For previous year, advised by the Secretary of the Senate that when the limit has been hit, they will advise the Senator, and the Senator, before it would be introduced, the Senator would come to the floor and request to have the exception so that it could be introduced through the Secretary's office. That's how it was.
Right, you'll be notified.
All right, further discussion? Yes, Senator from Montgomery County.
If I may, just a quick clarification, and I think I understood what you said, but then the messaging wasn't quite precise. 25 bills, and if they're pre-filed, an additional 5.
No, 20 bills, and if they are, I'm sorry, there is a cap of 20 bills, and if they've been pre-filed, 25. Right? So you get an additional 5 if you have pre-filed 5, pre-file 5, and then you get 20 on top of that.
All right, it reads, subject to subsection B of this rule, a senator may not request that the Department of Legislative Services prepare more than 25 draft bills or resolutions.
Look
Then
at number
the
2.
last paragraph reads, the limits in subsection A of this rule shall increase by 1 for each bill a senator pre-files with the Department of Legislative Services. Goes on, it says, not exceeding a total increase of 5 bills or resolutions.
Right.
So you're reading that as a total of 25, not it's 25, but then there's an exception of up to 5 bills if they're pre-filed, because the language, the limitations in subsection A, which is 25, of this rule do not apply to, and then it has paragraph 2 there, The ones not exceeding a total increase of 5 bills or resolutions that are pre-filed.
So it is, if you look at A2, there is a max of 20 bills that you are permitted to introduce. And then if you look at 2, there are an additional 5.
So there's
that
a
you
distinction between what can be drafted
Correct.
and what can actually be introduced
Correct.
then.
Correct.
Oh. Well, under those circumstances, some of the discussion that I've heard with implementing this rule at this point in time does create a level of complexity, because there are those of us who have made commitments, as was brought up, based on what the rule had been previously. So my concern, Mr. President, is that if we're adopting this rule for this session, that does put quite a few of us in a very awkward position, as opposed to perhaps we're on notice this session that starting next session, this would be the rule, so that we're in a position to then judge accordingly our workload as far as bills being introduced. So I do have some concern if we are implementing it for this current session.
I appreciate that, and I hear the concern of the body. I believe we can have this discussion, but if that applies to you, you do have the opportunity to come and ask for an exception. You will be notified when you hit that cap, and then you could ask for a suspension of the rule upon introduction of those beyond the cap.
I have concerns, Mr. President, but I'm just disappointed that this was not brought to the attention, or if it was, I overlooked it, but it was not brought to the attention of the members of the chamber prior to the coming legislative session. I know there's been requests, please reduce numbers of bills, and I understood that and have done so. But having said that, I'm not sure that I will be in compliance with this new rule should it take effect, and those bills have been committed to and drafted at this point for this session. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader, followed by the Senator from Howard and Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to emphasize that this whole idea is not to be punitive in any way. We've been talking about this for the last really 4 years, and I mean, all of you sit in these meetings way into the night. We have a couple committees that are spend even more time than others. And probably 4 years ago, we started looking at the fact that maybe we should put a limit of 25 bills on, which we did. And then we did some research and found out that really most people really only put 8 or 9 bills in. There were some that put lots more in, but most of the body put in 8 or 9 bills. Well, when we said then the limit was 25 bills, everybody put 25 bills in. So we ended up still with more work for every committee. So I don't think anybody's trying to be mean about this. I think we're just asking everybody to take a look at what you've got. If it's really earth-shaking and needs to go in this year, then by all means put it in. But if it's something that you're just hanging out there just to take the temperature on people, or just to float an idea, hold it for a year and see if we can't make this a little bit more workable for our committees. Again, we're not penalizing anybody, and I know everybody's got great bills, but we're also looking at what we can get done in 90 days. So I leave it at that.
All right, thank you, Senator. Senator from District 12. Are we good?
Thank you, Mr. President. I share the concern that my colleague from Montgomery County also expressed. I think it's really difficult after having made commitments to others and have already mapped out the bills that you're going to be likely doing for this session. I understand it's not intended to be punitive. I know there were discussions that were going on, but obviously when the rules come out is where the rubber hits the road. And I think a lot of the discussion prior to this was that this would be maybe not fully enforced this session, or at least prospective, until after this session. I do have a question about, whether or not this could be something that takes effect after the drop deadline so that it doesn't impact this current session and maybe could be applied to future sessions so that we can all kind of plan accordingly. And to the fact that there have been, basically the same number of bills or more bills that have been put forward even after the rule changed, limiting it to 25 plus 5 pre-filed bills. I think they're bills that are being requested by organizations and groups. They're bills that we want to work on our own too. The reason that many of us are now carrying more bills is because with a bill limit, it just simply gets redistributed to other members, right? So the reason that members may have had fewer bills are now carrying more bills is because those requests still keep coming in. We obviously have to be judicious in how we decide whether to put those requests through, but there are still plenty of requests coming through. So the folks that were filing fewer bills now are filing more bills because those asks are just being redistributed to other members. And so, would respectfully consider, just having this, I guess, pushed off until maybe after the draft deadline, or maybe considered for a later implementation so that it doesn't impact us now when we're midstream and being, already have commitments out for bills.
So let's see if any of our chairs have any thoughts about the issue.
No?
Recognize the Chair of Judicial Proceedings.
Thank you for that, Mr. President. Honestly, I'm actually in favor of this rule because what happens, especially in JPR, our hearings run late into the night. And as a byproduct of that, the quality degrades. And the quality of debate degrades, and people get tired, and the work product slows down. And so I think if we can all adhere to this new rule change, the quality of our work will enhance. The quality of our debate will be more cordial and better in committee. I think it's going to be ultimately it's going to be a better thing for our committee product. So I'm highly in favor of this. I'm sensitive to the concerns of the commitments that people have made. But if you could curtail, as the majority leader said, if you could curtail some of those requests, have some of those conversations, I think that would actually be greatly beneficial to the body. I know in JPR we struggle with this mightily, so I'm highly in favor of the rule.
Thank you, Senator. Yes, Chair recognizes the Senator from Harford County.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I appreciate the Rules Committee with their work on this because, echoing what the Chair of JPR just said, the committees are really been working so hard in these years, and I think we would have a better product if we could limit that some. But just one question. Under the previous rule, there was no limit on pre-filed bills, correct?
Same. Point of parliamentary procedure, the current rule is the same. So it is just moving 20 to 25.
It was 20, but before you could put in as many pre-filed as you want, right? In addition to those 25.
Oh, I see.
So I believe that's maybe the main reason you had so many bills, even with that cap, is because people started putting in so many pre-filed bills that were uncapped above that number. So to me, that's the best part of this rule, is putting a limit on the pre-filed bills too, and getting that whole number.
So just as a clarification, there's not a limit on the number of pre-filed bills under the current rule. Under the current rule, it is a limit of how many can be requested, not necessarily how many can be pre-filed. So all 25 could be pre-filed, but there is the 5 additional. So it just gives you, by having bills in pre-filed, it provides.
But the additional ones before were unlimited, correct?
No.
They were limited? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyhow, back to the original statement. I appreciate the work of the Rules Committee trying to help these committees out, especially JPR is one, but also our committee, Triple E, has some really late nights and a lot of subject matter. So thank you for your work on this, and I'm also in favor of that change. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Chair of Education, Energy, and the Environment.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add is the committee that had more bills than any other committee in the General Assembly. Actually, we could go further down. Honestly, I would support 10, 15, 20. This is I would characterize this rule change as a grand compromise, but I would associate my thoughts with that of the chair of JPR, and also just point out that at the end of, towards the end of session, last session, because of the quantity of bills, it did in fact have a major impact on our ability to put quality product here on the floor. And so I would say any attempt to get those numbers down, I 100% fully support, and so I'll stop there. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
President.
you, Chair. Chair, Budget and Tax.
Just very quickly, I half jokingly tried to get it amended to 15 in rules the other day. I strongly support this. We don't have that much of a problem, but I know others do. What I would simply say is, in terms of hopefully moving forward at this point, I would strongly support any member's request for suspension of the rules in terms of dealing with something they've pre-committed to strongly. I think this is a good rule. I think we should move forward at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Senator from Frederick County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think anyone that's on JPR or watched any of our lively banters long enough knows there's not enough Snickers for my hangriness. Amen. But I wanted to know, Mr. President, if there was any consideration given to the idea that, because this is the first I've heard about it. I mean, I heard rumors, but this is the first I'm actually seeing something solid. And I'm already well below because I know where my bills end up. So, but I wanted to make sure that. Got you. I wanted to make sure that. Is there any consideration that because this is the time that this is being introduced, that any bills that have been dropped, even if if they have an LR number, that if they're above that number, that this be considered the drop dead date, that anything that's already been dropped for writing, for crafting would be admitted, even if it's over the number for this time, and then anything going forward would be for consideration or to be eliminated if they're over that number. But because people do have more, I think it would be considerable, or we should give due consideration for those that are working hard for their constituents, and that today be that drop date, as long as it's been dropped for crafting up to this moment, I should say, not today, because then everybody will flood the bill drafters, and I don't want to be on their bad side. So, thank you.
No, thank you, Senator. And I do think, as was mentioned, as any rule is, a number of times we have late filed introduction of bills. We suspend the rules to do 2 readings in one day. There is discretion within the rules through a vote of the body. And so I think that is certainly the case for this one. And certainly the comments of those who have already made commitments is certainly something that I know the chair of the Rules Committee is more than open to considering and talking through as we work through it as a body in the implementation side. Chair of the Rules Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I totally understand and appreciate where everyone is coming from here and the folks who have come to you asking you. And I think we, like the chairman of the Budget and Tax Committee said, I would certainly support wholeheartedly a suspension of the rules to, at least in this first year, give people the grace and the flexibility to adapt to this new reality, adapt to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. All right, Chair recognizes from the Senator from Baltimore County.
Mr. President.
And Hartford.
I just got to stand and say this about the rules. We stand here, we're arguing this, but then I go to Rules Committee and I sit there and everybody comes in begging to bring their bills out of rules, and it's like shoveling sand with a pitchfork. Those bills just fly right out of rules. We don't hold any of them up, and it drives me crazy. Why do we have these rules with these rule books if we don't keep anything in the rules? And we just vote them all out. And it drives me crazy to watch all these bills come in, and we just flood the system. I watch the committee staff. They work their tails off over there, late nights, trying to get this stuff done. And I understand you have serious bills that are very important. But sometimes it's like, hey, have you gone to the departments, tried to work it out there? Have you tried to take it through, what is it? What's that committee we have? AELR? Tried to work it through that process. There's other ways in legislation. But it drives me crazy with the amount of legislation we put in, what it cost us. I mean, I always hear these numbers. It costs $25,000 a bill. I don't know what the number is, Mr. President. It'd be interesting for us to find out. I wish the press would try to find that out, because that would probably help with this debate, what it actually costs to have a piece of legislation drafted. But I'm going to say it, I'm on the Rules Committee, and every one of you guys come in there begging to get your bills out, and we let them all out, and we flood the gates again, trying to get them through the committees. So I'm just standing on my soapbox preaching that there's just too many bills. That's why I support this. and I support my chairman that we should take it down to 15.
Thank you, Senator. All right, let's hear from the Chair of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. President. I didn't want to be left out of this discussion. And first, I want to say I do support this amendment to the rules, and thank you, Madam Chair, for bringing it forward. I was told by staff today that we're going to be hearing 15 bills a day. And we're going to start hearing next week on the pro forma Wednesdays. We're going to start bill hearings early. My committee doesn't know that yet. They'll learn it today. But it's a lot. It's a lot for staff. And you may have had more bills, but Finance passed more bills than the other committee last year. So I do support this change, and thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All right, question before the body is on
Mr. President.
Rule 26. Yes, Chair recognizes the Senator from Prince George's and Anne Arundel.
Thank you. I want to make a comment about the context of this. It seems to me that these rules, the one we tried last year, I guess, and the one we're trying this year, seems to have two goals. One is staff time, and one is committee work time. And I think there were comments made, which I think are right, is by limiting the number of bills, it redistributes the bills among members. So I'm a little skeptical that this is going to make a big impact. I think the same number of people are going to be requesting bills, and it'll just be introduced by different people, as my colleague from Prince George has noted. So let's keep that in mind. But secondly, and I've made this argument in leadership over the years, is to me the biggest concern about the quality of work is our open-ended oral hearings. Is lots of other legislative institutions do not do that. They allow you to submit unlimited written testimony, which goes in the record, which the staff can read, members can read, everybody's voice can be heard. But for those of us, all of us, who have sat through committee hearings on bills that have been in 3 times, and the same people come in, and the advocates have a feeling that they have to show up and talk. And so some committees, including our own Budget and Tax, have moved away from having everybody be able to testify orally on every bill. And I would just urge, as part of this effort to make the workload better, that we move towards, and this is up to the chairs, move towards limiting oral testimony to when it is actually useful. And I hesitate to use this example because they don't have a great reputation these days, but I've seen it in action. I used to work there. On Capitol Hill, on hearings, they do a lot of other things badly. On hearings, they only have hearings on bills that the chair and the ranking member of the committee decide to have a hearing on. And when they decide to have an oral hearing on the bill, everybody can submit paper, but an oral hearing, the chair and the ranking member then decide, okay, it's going to be an hour, and we're going to have X number of witnesses on this side and X number of witnesses on that side. It's a very structured, and in my observation, a much more constructive way for members to actually learn, as opposed to what we do is say, you all come down and talk as long as you want. So I would urge us to consider moving in a little more disciplined direction in terms of hearings on bills. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right, yes, Senator from Baltimore City and County.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I thank the chair for this rule change. I believe it's the correct one. I just want to make 2 comments regarding, I'm the chair of AELR, so the comment is greatly appreciated. We don't write regulations, however, we can take our ideas to the agencies and attempt to do that. AELR works all year round, so we are listening, and we are, my colleague, we are having an opportunity to test out something in that context. As you know, there's nothing like, oh, we have this in regulation, why don't we just codify it? That one works really well. Secondly, this is just a value. I really appreciate, while other legislatures really limit the number of bills, limit the open hearing, I personally appreciate the value that we have, that every bill is heard, the value that our constituents can come, and that we're open. There are states like Pennsylvania where they only hear a few bills, but it is quite literally the legislators in that situation are in a position of advocating to chairs rather than their colleagues about getting things passed. I think it just creates just a much more narrow and less democratic system. So I believe that what we have before us is something that maintains the value that we have in Maryland, that every voice should be heard, And then secondly, also values that we need to have the time to be able to make the best decisions and to really have the type of debate that our constituents and frankly that our laws require. So again, I want to finally thank you for that. I support the bill change, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. All right, yes, Chair recognizes the Minority Whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know you often look to me to be the voice of moderation in this chamber, and I'm just speaking, speaking as a representative of our Republican caucus, I think we have, a lot of our members feel strongly about this in multiple ways. I just confirming that it sounds to me like the consensus is, in our caucus's case, I think we have at least a couple members that have been working on a suite of bills about specific issues, and they already were getting them working on drafted. And so it sounds to me like the consensus is we're going to be pretty lenient about making sure someone who's already was in that process have the opportunity this session. We want to move this forward. I strongly support the rule. I would actually like to amend it to also limit session to 45 days, but that's probably not going to go anywhere. I do think it's good to try to limit the amount of bills. Although I was just talking to my predecessor, former Judge Joe Getty, yesterday on the way home, and he was pretty crafty. He would always come up with some clever things. I had thought about saying maybe all of our Republican members should just put in the max number of bills to actually try to gum up the works one session for fun, but I thought that might not be looked upon very friendly. So in all seriousness, I support the rule, but I'm glad, just for the sake of our members in our caucus, that we have some folks who are working on some specific issues that they already were in process on. So some flexibility this session, and then we can move forward for sure on next year. So, I voted for this in rules, and I support the rule change.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from District 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, number one, I support this rule. I broke it last year, but I do support it. I think it's important that we hit priorities, and we do need to make sure that the product of the work is getting as much time and attention to it. But I will not support any time of limiting the amount that public can come and testify on a part of. That is absolutely going against why we broke away from England. I mean, we are supposed to be here so that the people can voice the way the laws are being written in the state of Maryland. And yeah, I'm willing to limit us on how many we can put in and set our priorities, but we cannot and will not limit residents of the state of Maryland from coming down and voicing their support or opposition for what the work we do here every 90 days. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. I will say I did not expect a Revolutionary War as part of the debate, but I appreciate the sentiment, truly. Yes, Senator from District 6.
Thank you, Mr. President. I agree. This is a good debate because the thing is, I believe more than anything, our constituents' testimony should be a priority to every person here. And most committees, if I do remember, we limit them to 2 minutes after we speak and we have our hearing. But coming from Western Maryland, and coming from Eastern Shore, coming from St. Mary's, coming from other counties that are far away, more than 2 hours, I think we should give them the time of day. I think we should give them that respect, Mr. President. But I do respect this rule. I think it's a good rule. But I think I agree with others that were saying that those that did put some bills in, and all of us have priorities in bills, and they're different. They're all different. But I believe in respect in that I respect those that believe that bill and their heart is a priority to them. And I believe we should give them the opportunity in rules, and I thank the chair for opening that up. So I think we're doing the right thing, but I think in priority and importance to every one of us. Our constituents is a priority. That's why we're here. And I think we need to listen and hear them that are coming again from far away. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right, I think we've had an excellent debate. I think we know the issues. Let's see, Senator from District 12.
Just a question for the chair for rules, if I may. Just a clarifying question, because it doesn't mention in here bills introduced by the request of joint committees. That kind of stems from work done in the interim. I assume that is included in paragraph 3, right?
I would interpret that as well.
Okay. Okay. And then to my colleague from Prince George's and Anne Arundel's point about redistribution, a couple months ago, our office actually had looked at how this proposed rule would reduce the number of bills. And so, you know, data person, and want to actually just present some numbers briefly here. If the bill limit were dropped to what is proposed here, the total reduction in the number of bills based on last year's introduction, there were 1,188 bills introduced. We reduced that by 59 bills, just 59 bills. So about less than a 5% reduction in bills with this rule being adopted, assuming that 50% of those bills, 50% of those 59, 60 bills are redistributed, which oftentimes I believe that these bills are being redistributed, you're only talking about a 29 bill reduction. So that's 2.5% reduction. Total number.
Senator moves to amend it to 5. Is that
Not quite, but just wanted to put some data out there in terms of what this will actually lead to.
Excellent. Thank you, Senator. All right. I think we generally have the issue. Appreciate the debate so far. Any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote? Chair, in explaining his vote, I first just want to say thank you to the body. I know this is early on, and I think that this is the interesting institutional conversation about how we function as a part-time 90-day legislature with time constraints. These arguments or issues and challenges have been brought up to me, to the chair, so in many different formats. And so we hope this has an impact. But we should always be changing the institution to reflect common values. And so I just appreciate the discussion today and the differences of opinion and how this institution can move forward. So yes, Senator has 2 minutes to explain his vote.
Thank you, and I support this. I think we as senators can do some things also. I know when we were fresh in the beginning of committee, we tend to ask a lot of questions, even on bills we know that are going to die or we know they're going to pass. And we'll spend an hour and a half on a bill that you know is not going anywhere. So from our standpoint, I think in the committee, we can also realize things like that would help lessen the load. We usually don't have that problem when it's 9 o'clock at night, but when it's 1 o'clock, a lot of those unnecessary questions, I think, come out.
All right. Thank you, Senator. All right. The clerk will take the call. With 43 votes in the affirmative, the Rule 26A is adopted. Again, thank you for the debate. That does it. The desk is now clear. However, we want to recognize the senator from Baltimore County who has a reflection for us for the chamber.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, today I want to take a moment to reflect on the extraordinary life and legacy of former President Jimmy Carter, a man who's exemplified the very best of what it meant to serve others. His contributions to our nation and the world spans decades, and his impact continues to inspire us all. When Jimmy Carter was elected in 1976, he brought with him a vision of principled leadership rooted in integrity, faith, and a belief in the dignity of every individual. His presidency may have been marked by significant challenges, rising energy costs, inflation, and international crises. But Carter consistently approached these issues with honesty, humility, and a deep approach to these, and a deep commitment to doing what was right, not just what was politically convenient. One of the most enduring achievements was his emphasis on human rights as a cornerstone of U.S. foreign policy. He believed that America's strength came not just from its military might, but from its moral leadership. This belief led to groundbreaking initiatives like the Camp David Accord in 1978, where he brokered a historic peace agreement between Egypt and Israel, an act of diplomacy that remains one of the great triumphs of the modern era. But it is what President Carter did after leaving the White House that truly sets him apart. In many ways, his post-presidency redefined what it means to serve. Through the Carter Center, which he founded in 1982, Carter worked tirelessly to advance democracy, mediate conflicts, and combat diseases that disproportionately affected the world's most vulnerable populations. His leadership in eradicating guinea worm disease reduced cases from millions to mere dozens, is a testament to his unwavering commitment to alleviating human suffering. And then there was his work with Habitat for Humanity. Well into his 90s, Carter could still be found, hammer in hand, helping to build homes for families in need. This wasn't symbolic, it was deeply personal. For him, his service was not about titles or recognition. It was about rolling up his sleeves and doing the heartfelt, faithful, and dedicated work of making the world a better place. Jimmy Carter's character has always been his guiding light. He was a man of profound faith who had taught Sunday school in his hometown of Plains, Georgia, for decades. He lived modestly, choosing a simple life over wealth or luxury, and above all, he lived with a sense of purpose, a belief that each of us has the power and the responsibility to make a difference. In his own words, President Carter once said, "My faith demands that I do whatever I can, wherever I am, whenever I can, for as long as I can, and whatever I have to try to make a difference." And that's exactly what he did. As we reflect on his legacy, let us remember that Jimmy Carter's greatest contribution is not just what he accomplished, but how he lived, with humility, compassion, and an unshakable belief in the power of service. His life reminds us that the true greatness is not measured by power or wealth, but by the impact we have on others. Today, we honor a life that was devoted to peace, justice, and love. May we all strive to follow his example and leave the world a better place than we found it. Thanks.
So very, very well said. Senator from Montgomery County.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senator, thank you very much for that reflection. It just reminds us how short sometimes life is, even though I know he lived a very fulfilling life, and how important public service is. Mr. President, I stand to journalize the remarks from the senator from the 10th District.
Without objection, we will most certainly journalize the wonderful remarks and thank the senator for taking the time to offer us that reflection. Thank you, truly. All right, let's go to committee announcements. Chair of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I've had a group here waiting the whole time to be introduced. Can
Yes,
I do
please,
that first?
please, Senator, may proceed.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'm privileged to introduce the Maryland Athletic Trainers Association, an organization dedicated to the health and safety of athletes and active individuals across our state. MATA, as they're known, represents athletic trainers who are instrumental in preventing, diagnosing, and treating injuries sustained in sports and physical activity. Their work is vital not only at the professional and collegiate level, but also in high schools, industrial, and healthcare settings. Please join me in recognizing the MATA trainers. Behind me in the gallery above, a number had to leave for school, but thank you all for staying and for being here.
Welcome, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. President, for that. The Finance Committee will meet at 1 o'clock today for an organizational meeting. I ask that you bring your staff. I think they'll find the information very beneficial. And at 1:30, we'll have an update from the Prescription Drug Affordability Board.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, Chair of Triple E.
Thank you, Mr. President. Triple E will first start at 12:30. We're going to, for those of you members or staff that need a refresher on how to use the floor system, we're going to have our ITO, information technology folks, come at 12:30. At 1 o'clock, we're going to have an organizational meeting. Bring your staff to that. And then finally at 1:30, we're going to have a briefing from the State Board of Elections. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Yes, Vice Chair of Budget and Tax.
As the chair said yesterday, we're not going to have a meeting today or tomorrow, Budget and Tax.
Excellent. Chair of Judicial Proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'll meet today at 1 p.m. for an organizational meeting. Again, bring your staff for that. And then immediately following that, we'll roll into bill hearings. We have 5 bills to hear today.
Wonderful. Alrighty, jumping in. Look at JPR going for that gold run. Yes,
Mis-
all right.
Mr.
Yes,
President,
Chair,
I also have an organization.
Yes.
Please, the body, if they're still there, the Maryland School Psychologists Association. You know, they play a vital role in ensuring that our children are safe and healthy and advocating for best practices. So please I'm offering a warm Senate welcome if they are still there.
They're in absentia, but we appreciate our psychologists. They had to run, so we thank them. And yes, Senator from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also have an introduction. I don't often have introductions, so this is unusual. So let me preface this by saying we already heard some history from the Revolutionary War. I'm going to take you back to 1818. When Daniel Webster concluded his Supreme Court argument in the case of Dartmouth College versus Woodward with well-regarded remarks. He addressed Chief Justice John Marshall and he said, "Sir, you may destroy this little institution. It is weak. It is in your hands. I know it's one of the lesser lights in the literary history horizon of our country. It is, sir, as I have said, a small college, and yet there are those who love it." Well, up in the gallery today are alumni from my college, Williams College, which is also a small college tucked away in the folds of Western Massachusetts. And there are those who love Williams College as well. Please give them a warm welcome.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Excellent. Last final announcement is we are headed to the DLS building. We are a little bit late for the ribbon cutting. So immediately following, for anyone who is interested in cutting the ribbon for the DLS building, it was at 10:30. So we're going to quickly move over there right after this. So are there any further announcements? Yes, Senator from Harford County.
Harford and Cecil this
Harford
time.
and Cecil,
Thank you, Mr.
yes,
President.
of course, thank you.
Just want to announce tradition, the second day of session is Cecil Night in Annapolis. So please come join the Senator from District 36 and myself. It's at Calvert House from 4:30 to 8:30. There's also a Cecil Day in Annapolis, and I'd like to thank the chair of Triple E for joining me on a panel for that. That's earlier in the afternoon, but that's at the Maryland Inn, actually. But Cecil Night is at the Calvert House, so feel free to stop by and say hello.
Excellent. Thank you. Yes, Senator from Baltimore County.
Thank you very much. For the Baltimore County delegation, 20 minutes after Floyd, we will be meeting in the welcome room for a quick vote session on the delegation's leadership.
Excellent. All right, any further messages? Yes, Co-Chair of the Protocol Committee.
Mr. President, would it be appropriate at this time to thank the pages because I think we're in pro forma session, or should that be held off?
I think we will do it tomorrow just because we have to get over to. Let's thank them generally for everyone that is here. Thank you all. Thank you. And we'll do an individual one tomorrow at the pro forma. Thank you. All right, if that does it, let's do a quorum call before we adjourn.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 42 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate of Maryland stand adjourned until Friday, January 10th for a pro forma session at 11:30 a.m. and adjourning today in honor of President Carter.
Without objection, so ordered. Be safe, everyone. See you across the street.